Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Mangaung Visual Arts Showcase in collaboration with the National Arts Festival. Launched in 2017 during the Free State Arts Festival, the Mangaung Art Fair is an inspiring artist-centered exhibition platform that showcases local talent and empower the local art scene in the province. This art showcase will attempt to fuse the historical narratives of Bloemfontein with the contemporary South African art scene by representing the many cultures and languages that have descended in the Free State Mangaung Art Fair. This showcase is spearheaded by Simetanza Library, a woman-led creative consultancy and agency that access, celebrate, and leverage the cultural capital that this province has to offer. My name is and I'm the online presenter for this event, and I would like to invite you into our creative space to come and share this experience with us. Today we have 6 phenomenal artists here in our space, and I'm going to give them each the opportunity to introduce themselves. We're going to start with Tiana.
Good afternoon, thank you for hosting me at the Mangaung Visual Arts Showcase. It's amazing to be here. My name is Tiana arts organizer and poet here in Bloemfontein, Free State. I'm excited to be here.
Good afternoon, my name is Mangaung. I'm a local artist based here in Bloemfontein. I also work at the University of the Free State as a project coordinator at our art gallery.
Good afternoon, my name is Zinzibelo Sifumba. I'm based in Bloemfontein. I'm a visual artist and art educator.
Hey everyone, my name is Fiona Maina and I'm a student at the University of Victoria. I'm currently done with my postgrad, but I do photography part-time, and yeah, I'm here to showcase my work.
Okay, I'm going to briefly introduce myself. My name is Untlutile Semela, and I'm in the academic space actually because I have my master's in politics. So it's a bit far off from the art space, but as someone who writes, and I write in different mediums on different things, and that's how I came into the art space. I work for an organization, I write for an organization called Arts Help. It is a UN-based startup, so it's got 4 million, it's our publication, 4 million users. So what we do is that we talk about artist sustainability and how it relates to that, and art, how it uplifts people, because art is not just about the talent, it's about so much things more than that. So that's what I do, and I highlight that in terms of anything that needs to be highlighted on, be it justice, political, in every sphere. So basically that's what my passion is, and I'm also compiling short stories whereby it is just inspired by the strong women around me, just my environment, where I grew up, and that's basically me in a nutshell.
For many people, arts in Bloemfontein has not reached its destination, and that's why I'm titling this presentation as part of the Masterclass, a journey of organizing arts in Bloemfontein. I want to take you through a bit of my personal journey and the people I've collaborated with to explain what are the challenges and outcomes of organizing arts in this city. We're looking at multiple arts media, from visual media to written to music, and all of these combined into creating a powerful force for arts right here in this city. The first thing I'd like to present to you is on the sort of events that we organize here in Bloemfontein. We've done these live music showcases at various venues in the city, activating spaces that have been unused or underutilized in Westdean, in Willows, in the Bloemfontein CBD. On this slide you can see some images of some of the recent music showcases we've held here in Bloemfontein, featuring one of our regular artists, Blurk Isis. What we basically do is we bring together a bunch of young people just like myself into a space that hasn't been used, and we show them artists they aren't yet exposed to. This achieves real exposure for artists, which is a word that we use as a clutch, but we don't usually actualize. We give people the opportunity to perform live in front of audiences. And secondly, we create a space for live music. That's something that is the sign of a developed art industry, when there's spaces that exist for people who play with drums and keyboards and sing into microphones for live audiences. And as an artist, you also are forced to develop into the kind of artist that has the persona and charisma to perform in front of a crowd. Very similar to this, we had weekly showcases that include open mics and a more intimate setting, almost like Tiny Desk that you've seen NPR do. We set up a really nice cafe weekly on Sundays between July and September this year. We had the opportunity to have different artists showcase each week, up to 4 artists each week, across different art forms from raga music to hip hop to soul to alternative indie. And these artists had the opportunity to have conversations with the audience, present new music, and receive reception for their performances. So it's a way for artists to develop, but even artists who are developed, it's an opportunity for them to have an intimate setup with the crowd and the audiences that they engage with in the city. We also did this consistently, so it enabled us to create a culture where arts venues became institutions that people know. If I go to that place, there's going to be live music. This is the restaurant that I sit down and listen to the best Bloemfontein has to offer. We also merged this with visual art forms, allowing a project to paint the environment in order to create an artistic space, and we invited poets as well as the project developed, and we had a space not just for music but also for poets who would read their poetry or perform their poetry across a variety of different poetic art forms. Linked to this is the club we formed at the University of the Free State whilst I was still a student. This is called the UFS Poetry Club, short for Po Club. So on this slide, you're going to see the various activities that Po Club has committed to, including a tour. In 2019, we toured to Kimberley, and this year again, we toured to Kimberley. We took something called a poetic drama, which is a mix of poetry and theatre, and a bit of visual art, if you can see how faces are painted up, in order to create a multimedia artistic showcase, which we showed as part of the Awakening Social Sessions Festival at the Northern Cape Theatre, also activating a space in the Northern Cape that had been underutilized. The second activity that you can see there is we had a multiple tour. We didn't just go to Kimberley, we also performed right here in Bloemfontein in underutilized spaces, and we were invited to perform in De Wetsdorp in front of a school, a Christian De Wet high schoolers who were also participating in terms of reciting poetry. So it enabled us to also go to a school and to start to work with younger children in order to raise them up in terms of poetry, and that's something that the Poetry Club is really keen to do. Activate spaces, but also activate youth development. Links to this are other Po Club activities that we did on campus. So on campus, we were able to organize activities at the local bar in order to create a more musical space. So the bar was mostly a space for alcohol and gathering, but we were able to transform it into an artistic space. We also constructed an art space on campus, which was a wall that was painted on both sides. The painting was done by volunteer students who could, at any time of the day, just bring their spray paint or their paint and just put their mark on the wall, express themselves openly. That was constructed into an art space where we had regular events and weekly arts markets where people who make prints, sell clothes, sculptures, and CDs even for musical artists could sell their artistic products. So cultural workers were given a market on campus in order to engage in an economic market with audiences and clients, but it was also an artistic space where people could perform and could basically feel free. It was one of the only spaces on campus where a student had the opportunity to mold architecturally what the space looked like and then visually what the space looked like in terms of art and graffiti and murals. Those Po Club activities were carried out weekly through our workshops, and then also we had events in theaters on campus. We would do flash mobs as well at the Student Food Center. Basically, it was students coming together and actually practicing art and not reserving it to some kind of structure or the classroom, but living it. Linked to these activities, we opened up a YouTube channel, and this also exposed us to another form of artwork, which was videography. We were able to create documentaries, we were able to also create animated videos, and then also record some of the poetry that we were doing as the club and music, and put it up on our YouTube channel. That exposes us to another form of artwork, which is the digital realm of art, which we were able to expose ourselves through YouTube and also connect to wider audiences. So this project moves from being a local project, which exists only for those on the university campus, to anyone who has internet connection around the world. The next major project that I was involved in, and this also encapsulates various forms of art forms, is a magazine called Culture Review Magazine. I became the chief editor of this magazine last year, and this magazine focuses mostly on the literary forms of art. In other words, people writing articles, essays, poems, and submitting it, but it is also connected to other art forms through reviews, book reviews, reviews of film and television, reviews of art, gallery, opening exhibitions, and music concerts. So we were able to connect the literary art form to other forms of visual and audio media to writing reviews of that content. The magazine also operates a section on the website where you can see nice pictures in gallery format, and that enables us to connect a sort of archival space for various forms of art around South Africa. The magazine focuses mostly on concerning Black life. We write about history, about politics, about film, about culture in its entirety. This archival magazine, how I got involved was I was writing these television reviews about things that I was watching on TV, and I wanted a space where I could take all that writing and communicate it with the world. And so I had written this massive article called Black America is King, right after Beyonce had released Black is King, which was meant to be a collaboration between Beyonce and African artists, sort of the kind of projects that we're doing on our side. So I wrote a little criticism of it, and it got 30,000 views. And that's when I realized the capacity of the platform for people who are right here in Bloemfontein to reach the entire world. Similarly, just like we did with the UFS Poetry Club, Culture Review magazine also opened up a YouTube channel, and this enabled us to release video essays, film reviews in video format, also our reviews of books, philosophy, and so forth, what we were also able to put into video format, which made it easier for people to watch and listen to and engage with the content. We're in a new kind of century where all art forms have to diversify, not just literary, but also audio and visual. And the connection between the two produces a new form of art that each independent art form cannot access. We're talking about new realms of space and being that are accessible by connecting different forms of art. And that's something we're able to achieve through the digital magazine connected to the YouTube channel. So the overall lesson from this masterclass, the first is organize as a group. We formed a poetry club, and it was through our collaborative efforts that we were able to emerge many different projects. It's also through collaboration that you can expose yourself to the mixing of various art forms. We won't have access to the ability to do videography at the same time as live music, at the same time as poetry, at the same time as a literary magazine, if you don't have a group of different people with various skills working together. That's especially critical in Bloemfontein, which is not yet developed to the point where we would say art has arrived. We are still on the journey. And you know, a journey is best when you do it together with friends. So where to from here in terms of our movement and what I hope can be the movement for the entire city? The first is we need to start to own our own art spaces. We need to have our own venues. The great thing about working at the University of the Free State is we had access to the university's resources. Once we moved off campus, we realized it's a really tough world, and it's very difficult to organize arts if you don't have a space to do that organizing in. The second is we need even more collaboration. We've already achieved so much with the collaboration we've done so far. We would never abandon that principle. We're inviting artists across the province, not just in the city of Bloemfontein, but the whole of Free State, to work together, to find modes of meaning at the intersections of our art media and our art forms. And finally, we want to focus on the next generation of artists. We've already done one school visit, but we want to do more of that. We'd like to raise a new generation of artists that when they enter the university space, or even if they don't attend university, they know that art is something that they can sustain themselves from or have some kind of meaningful living standard with. But most importantly, that the next generation of artists are more collaborative thinking and achieve even greater heights than we have. That's the journey, and that's where we are right now, but I'm excited for when we arrive.
Okay, good afternoon everybody. Yes, so I'm an artist, I am Mangaung, and I'm based here in Bloemfontein. And I thought for this afternoon session, I just wanted to take you through what I'm doing here and a few of the activities that I've been busy with recently, and I'm going to touch on like artistic production and why that matters and why we do it and why we invest in it. So in any way, the shot you see there is my studio, and then these are a few of my recent artworks. As you can see, and as you probably also seen from the artworks that are here on display, I love working with artworks that work and function as if they're toys. They are frequently like puzzles, things that you need to complete, things that you need to handle and move. I'm trying very hard to not only create work that need to be gazed at, that works that also need to be handled, to kind of get you to experience some kind of beguilement, the kind of beguilement you had as a kid playing with toys, but it sometimes deals with really serious issues, and it especially tries to figure out very complex social interactions in some way. Okay, go on. Okay, so this is so this is one project I worked on as an artist, as a creative. And I thought I'll share this today because it very much had a huge influence on my probably career, but also on the way I think about what we do creatively as artists. So it involved, it's my city, it was a huge production, involved 3 very large 8-meter high sculptures that were produced by self-selecting communities. I'll come back to that now. In various communities, it had to represent those communities, and then it had to move to a central location where, through a huge display, it was in the end the fireworks and everything burned it in this, almost like a Burning Man kind of ceremony. So, in any way, the sculpture that I worked on was called the Toy Windmill. And part of our brief was to make artworks that has a kind of a lightness to it, that would speak to audiences in every age, that would fill people with some kind of wonderment. And then also it needed to be incomplete in some way, so that the communities that it represented needed to add to it in forms of messages, or in my case, wishes, so that it needed to evolve throughout the time that it is being showcased. So I dealt, initially I wanted to deal with the university community, which I represented, as being a gated community, as it being enclosed off to certain people. And then on the evening before we started on production, the Shimla Park racial brawl happened on campus. So, as you can imagine, this kind of really made working with social cohesion concepts slightly more complicated. But we had a big team. It wasn't just me that had to figure this out. And as I engaged with the community, as I went and I collected wishes, but as I went along, I had these really valuable conversations with the people in my community about what happened. And it's on a very small scale, and I realized that not everything of those conversations get represented in the actual work, but many of those wishes ended up being very content-driven, very, very cathartic, I suppose, for some people. But yes, so by the end, when we attached them and then burned them in that kind of cathartic way, we really I know, and the people that contributed to it know, that there's some conversation really happened around these issues we had. Okay, and then the next slide, please. Okay, so I also wanted to touch on these huge productions. Because while we were working on it, we were asked quite frequently, there's so much effort going into this. It's funded internationally by the Andromeda Foundation. Why spend money on it? Why spend money on something that's going to get burned in the end, that can't be a permanent structure in the city? What's the point? It's still very hard to answer. I don't think that there's any kind of clear answer to that. But as you can see there's many layers to this production. Because there was a parade, and because these structures stood on certain spaces, because we wanted people to feel like it belonged to them and it wasn't just imposed on them, we had to have so many meetings. You have to reach out and ask people's permission, and they can say no. They can say we don't want it there. You have to make sure that people buy into what you envision. So just by, in the end, this is I think what I'm getting to is that the end product, the structure standing there, this final thing is actually the smallest part of an artistic production. In some ways, we emulate exactly the kind of social cohesion we are trying to get at just by producing it. The production is the product, the process we went through, the hard conversations, the asking permission, the clumsiness of engagement. That's what made this worthwhile, not the final forms of the structures. Okay, so I'm going to jump a lot now into the next artwork. That was a huge production. It's my city. We think it might have involved up to 5,000 people, and we had a lot of funding, and it's a big thing. But this artwork that I want to talk to right now is here. You can see it, and I thought it would be very good to now focus into something that's almost like a micro version of that. So you have this big production, and then there's this really tiny artwork that involves a similar process, but that's on such a smaller scale. So I have reason to visit Richmond in the Northern Cape. I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but it's on the N1. Please visit it. It's really cool. It's a tiny, tiny little town, and I go there about once or twice every year. And then this year I was invited to be an artist in residence there at Modern Arts Project. And we were given a kind of a frame in which to work. We could produce new work, but there was also craftspeople and a community outreach. And if we wanted to, we could work with them to design new products that they would make then sell to generate income for themselves. So I've been there a lot, so I had an idea of what I would like to do. And then, as you can see in that middle image, it's the kind of a burglar bars that's in front of people's gates and houses. So in Richmond, it kind of struck me that it's extremely unique. It's never a store-bought thing. People actually, weld it themselves, and it's very specific to each house. That's the one thing I know, and then the other thing is that the local residents love to play dominoes. So first I collected all these almost like little signs, as if each house has a little sign. I collected these signs in a very simple format as a kind of a sketch. I went around town and I did that, and of course I had to again have those conversations. Why am I doing this? In a smaller scale, kind of engage with the community that I'm trying to make an artwork about. And then afterwards I designed a game. So it's a game that it works like dominoes. You have to, and it can only be played by the local residents. So the game's rules are that you can only build the structure, complete the domino game. You have to recognize, as you recognize what house a certain block represents, you can put it down to play, but then you have to share a story, and then the next player needs to connect with that story and whatever signs are on the previous block. So I don't know if you've seen those artworks there, but it's each and every version in that series based on a specific game played by specific people and specific to Richmond, and how the houses look there, people that live there, and the stories that they share. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that I came in as a stranger. So I think this is a little bit part of my message about like engagement and play and art, is that a stranger, it's a bit awkward to come in as a stranger, but a stranger also has a function. Just by asking, because you don't know, just by noticing something different than the people that live there usually does, you already set something a little bit in motion. There's a creativity that comes with a new gaze, a fresh gaze, that is valuable, and I realize the sensitivity that should come with that, and the kind of critique that should also come with that. But there is something valuable in coming in as a ignorant person, you know. So in any way, you can go on. So part of that is the products that will now be designed around this artwork. So you can see that this kind of engagement kind of blooms out a little bit. You know, there's not just one facet to it. It's not just now I've made an artwork. Those signs will be incorporated into various products, beading products, and also it's at the left you can see how it's being silk screened, so it will be part of a bookbinding project. And I kind of enjoy the fact that these products are so very much, you know, aimed at what the town looks like and what is kind of unique, and not unique because it doesn't happen anywhere else, but unique because it's been noticed, and it's part of that story now. Yes, so the next slide is just the finished artwork. It's one of them. So I can continue with this series indefinitely, as you can imagine. It's a tiny little artwork. It's not in any way the same scale as It's My City was, but it's again that process of engagement and looking at things as a stranger, and then also maybe even a little bit, but in any way. So I thought I would link that two things, the small and the big art production, to show, you know, why we even produce artworks, and especially art that tries to engage in specific ways. You know, there's always a little bit of a collection of stories, and then reproducing it in a new way, so that people that are familiar with it also see it afresh. Yes, so that's so the work is called Castle of Cross Destinies. I'll explain that to anybody that wants to hear later. It's going to take too much of our time now. And then the last project that I just quickly want to stand still with is, okay, so I work at the university's art gallery, and you can go out onto the next slide actually. And then, because I think we might discuss this later, because I think it's a very relevant kind of theme of our times, me and a colleague Tabor put together a virtual exhibition called the Interface Exhibition. And it brings together a collection of local and national artists that in this time where we have migrated to such an extent to virtual spaces because of COVID-19, we encounter artworks on interfaces, and they are these meeting points between artists and artworks and audiences, but interfaces have their own message and they're far from transparent. So this exhibition brings together artists that kind of wrestle with this kind of new reality, the kind of dissonance between material things and their virtual counterparts, new socialities, a longing and loneliness, kind of dependency on devices, the way we work now, that has changed drastically. And then also this kind of unboundedness of visual spaces, like content can go anywhere. So there's almost this complete democratization where we gatekeeping entities like galleries and museums are being so you know, it pushes against that again. So that's great, and some artists embrace that. So there's a virtual exhibition, and it's up, and you guys can go and see it. And then we'll have a physical iteration of the exhibition in 2022. And yes, it will deal with exactly that kind of physicalness, and then the virtual, and how that can and cannot completely ever meet. And yes, that's basically it from me.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll present my work. I'm a visual artist. I specialize in painting, and also I'm an art educator. So I facilitate product development workshops. As an artist, my work is inspired by art practice and community work. So those two artworks, they are taken from a child's perspective. That's where I was exploring the child's experiences. So those scenes are taken, or is the concept that is developed from a child labor perspective. Okay, that artwork is consists of different playgrounds which were taken around Bloemfontein. So the artwork is titled "Empty Playgrounds in the Sky." So I was investigating of the same theme, which is child labor. So I went to all the playgrounds which were empty at that time. So I placed them on windows, different window panels. Okay, that artwork, it's the concept is developed from child labor. The pictures are taken from different playgrounds around Bloemfontein, and then I used different panels, 5 panels, window panels, where I have placed them. So it's sort of like a holy scene, but at the same time it exposes what happens in our society. So I've worked with different scenes, with different themes. So I was exploring with media. So I took a newspaper and then transformed it into a dress, so which it spoke of the situations or the current the trends that we follow as people. Let's move to the next one. So I've said I'm a facilitator, and also I'm working with as a coordinator. So I am involved in different projects. I've worked as a store manager in different art functions. So as a facilitator, I aim to work with young children where I transfer the skill. So I've worked with school children where I introduce art to them, where I help them to develop themes for certain projects. Move to the next one. Okay, recently I've been involved in product development workshop where I transferred the skill of painting to youth around Bloemfontein. So I've taught them to develop a certain theme which we're using motherhood in it. So each artist came up with a theme of motherhood, and they portrayed the theme in different ways. So I transferred skill to 7 artists. Okay, as an artist, as a facilitator, I am aiming to be an influence to other young people, and I'll be having more of the product development workshops.
Hello everyone, how are you guys doing? Okay, my name is Fiona Maina, and I'm a photographer based here in Bloemfontein. My work, I mostly work with people that I've met. So, well, my process is basically meeting people, the general public. So, for instance, I know Tiamo, I know Ratine, and that's how my conversation begins. So I usually go to places, to different locations, yes you can say different locations, where I take the photos. So I started off with portrait photography. That was my initial focus. I would normally shoot people in mundane areas. So it could be their backyard, the mall, very subtle places, like places where you wouldn't consider a shoot to take place. And that's where most of my ideas would generate. I would try to mix both my style of photography and their style to incorporate it and create something brand new. What's the next one? Those are more portrait shots. Yes, so most of the times I try to focus only on females. I know for a fact that women are usually not so comfortable, if I should say, in the spaces where male photographers are. So I try to create a new space for them where they could fully express themselves without feeling limited to what they would want to express. So that has been my focus for a while. And also telling Black stories, I think that is something that has been neglected for some time, especially, I wouldn't say in Bloemfontein, but most photography that I saw was not something that I connected with. So I wanted to create something where people would look at it and be like, whoa, like, where's that taken? Is this really in Bloem, you know? Just telling a new perspective of Bloem. Yes, you can change the slide. Most of them are just still portraits. And I also have participated in a couple of things. My publications include, well, I started with the New Read competition. That's where I got most exposure and more confidence to take part in competitions. You know how it goes. You usually get nervous, and if you get negative feedback, you're always scared to continue. But that's where I started. And then I ventured on. I was fortunate enough last year to be in a campaign with the editor that I use. So that was something big for me because it's something that I've always used to describe my work, with the tones that I use, with the colors. Yeah, that was really a highlight for me last year. So yes, I started off with portraiture, then I went on to fashion editorial photography. I think this was basically my favorite type that I encountered. It incorporates both my portrait style and also fashion, obviously. So yet again, I'm still learning, but most of the times I shoot wherever I feel the need to create. So yes, I have combined my skill with many other artists. So that is Jess Moonchild. She is a designer. Oh, well, she does a lot, but she's a creator, a content creator. So she was the one who initiated the conversation, and we continued. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, so most of the ideas fashion-wise come from the people I meet. So I usually just incorporate what they want into my style. Yes. Next slide. Yes, and then on this slide, this is now the lady on the left had created this garment. It was part of her project. And I decided, since she's from Bloom, I really wanted to showcase her work. And yeah, we created some magical work, and it was featured in a couple of magazines. So yeah, I'm really enjoying fashion, editorial photography. Okay, next slide. Still more work with a local brand, called Stale Plums. So they had released a clothing line, and they really needed someone to interpret their vision. And we created this just across the street, by the way. So I just try my best to understand what the customer wants, and we try to do something that would look ideally good and aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. Okay, next slide. And yeah, this is what I'm on now. I'm mostly focusing now on storytelling. So I've worked on a couple of series. So the first one was the hair series, which I did in Res. Next slide. Where I focused on the different hair journeys that the girls in my residence were experiencing. So the girl on the right, her process was basically rolling her hair and staying like that for the day, while the girl on the right had a whole wash day routine and consisted of a lot of several steps to get her hair how it looked. So I just wanted to document the different types of cultures regarding hair in Res, and yeah, it came out really well. Next slide. Yes, this is the love series that I've been currently working on. As you can see, I shot it. I'm not sure if you guys know, I shot this on film, and I know a lot of people and photographers don't really delve with this in film. So I really wanted to try something new. It was really a great experience. I think this was my first project where I worked on film primarily. All the subjects were really wonderful to work with, and since I tried working on a new medium, I really understood the process that is involved in photography. Most of the times, photography is rushed, and shooting on this medium allowed me to really understand the process. And then next one, next slide. And this is the final series that I'm working on right now. That's Tiamu on the right. And yes, the series is called Dreaded. I'm just basically trying to share a conversation between individuals with dreadlocks and just hear their story, the story they have to tell. And most of my ideas always come from simple conversations, simple engagements. It's really not something complicated that is needed when you create. As long as you have the imagination, I think anything is possible. And then next slide, please. And then I've also collaborated with a lot of local artists in terms of producing their cover arts and also being a creative director for their work. On the right, on the right is on the album that Orchide did. It's on race. God and Other Editions. It was a well-done project on both sides. Then on the left is a picture of my close friend, and he also worked on a project called Roses. So basically, I help create the vision. I convert the words into pictures. So that has really helped me understand a lot on the artistry, musician side of Lubricate. And yeah, also, next slide. Yes, that's the cover art we did. Next slide. Yes, that's more of the cover art. And the game slide. And then this is this is the most recent cover art I've done. Yes, so I usually just interpret what the musician wants to see. And yes, so that concludes what I've been doing so far. Usually with photography, it's very engaging. So I've worked with Tiago in terms of helping with the creative scene with the events that he does. Creatives in Bloom really need to work together to achieve a common goal. I think one of the most important things is collaboration. And the only way possible for us to continue creating in Bloom is by continuously networking with each other and understanding where we can help each other achieve certain goals. Yes. Thank you.
Can you tell me that when it comes to, please describe what your community engagement is and why it's important that art also engages with the community?
Not everyone has money, which means they can't access art spaces, they can't access art creation, they can't buy musical instruments. So community engagement is about going to places that don't have access and providing that access.
Okay.
Yo, remove your mask. Oh no.
Okay. Well, the next one is Mene, is that speaking of community engagement, also is that it's important for art people to realize that art they need to diversify. They shouldn't just work in just be a talent. You know, there's a whole value chain that goes towards being artists. And as someone who's an art pro, art project manager, can you go into detail into that and the importance of artists diversifying?
Yes, I can speak to that. That first project I showed you guys, it's my city. So I worked on it as an artist, but I was also very much involved in the organization of it. And I realized to what extent, like, actually creating and designing the work is such a small part of it. Being an arts administrator is what I also do now. And that project definitely gave me the skills to do the job that I have now. So in kind of producing work, in organizing events, in administering things, you are creating work for yourself, work that I think people definitely need to get paid for. And I think it's a skill that you can definitely brand yourself as. And it's a scarce skill, and it definitely needs creativity and artistic knowledge. So people who study art, creatives, people who want to be artists can definitely branch out their skill set in that way and monetize that in some way and you know, get some kind of employment in that way too. I think we can do a lot more as a community and as tertiary education, on a tertiary education level, to bring in art production qualifications and art administrating qualifications, and to, you know, gear our young people towards employment through those angles as well. So everybody here knows that you kind of need to hustle. I think everybody realizes very soon that you're not just going to be an artist, and I think we should prepare people much more to realize that, and to not think that you're I don't know, I think there's a little bit of a misconception that you're a sellout, you're not just being paid for your art, which is a strange thing we have to get over. I think the more you do, the more angles you understand about producing art, the better you are at what you're doing, and the better you are geared towards, you know, employing yourself and being supported within the industry. So yes, that's it.
Zizi, I wanted to ask, since you do operate in you operate in academic sense by teaching and also engage with the community, do you think that there's a linkage between the two, whereby they can create sort of like a symbiotic relationship between the two? Because not everyone can afford or go to tertiary to learn how to do art. How can the two work together in order to uplift the community and the kids who cannot afford to go to higher institutions?
Okay, I think it is important as a person to be involved or try to learn of things that are happening in society. And also, most of the people don't understand what So it is important to try to bring concepts that will teach people how to understand the situation through art. So I think there is a linkage between what is happening around and art. So if you did not go to university, or if you don't have any money to go to university, you can be able to still develop yourself as a person, also as an artist.
So it says that you shoot both digital and film photography, right? Please explain the difference between the two, and when does each come into play, and when do you need to use each, or are they interchangeable?
Okay, so I've been shooting digital for since I started photography. So my transition happened about a year ago. So during lockdown, that's when I started engaging more into film. So digital is more, if I could say, quick. So you don't have time to engage with your subject. You're more focused on just getting the perfect shot. Whereas with film, every process, every moment counts. So the moment when you start shooting film, you're more engaged with your subject. You don't have a chance to look at the camera and the screen, because film, well, you have to process the images before you can actually realize what's happening. So in that sense, film has really taught me how to basically trust my guts. So in a situation where I would normally not shoot something, with film you don't have any bearings, you only trust your eyes. So the moment I started shooting on film, I realized I could trust myself more. Before I was quite skeptical. So if I should say digital is more hands-on approach, you guys know, film is more hands-on approach, digital is for the quick shots, if you should say.
You do poetry, right? So as a black man, you're seen as the height or the epitome of masculinity, right? So as a poet, you have to somehow convey your emotions and talk about your emotions and put on paper. So how do you deal with that? Do you find that do you find it becomes easier to do that, or how do you deal with those two being sort of like vulnerable on paper and your masculinity?
I'd say for me, growing up, masculinity has been something I've thought about for a long time. I think a lot of young boys are brought up in very toxic ways. You've got an entire patriarchal system that positions men in ways that are harmful for women and non-binary people. And usually masculinity is interpreted as you gotta be a strong person, you gotta be a provider, you gotta rough it up, you gotta not show your emotions as you're speaking about. So I think it is true that a lot of people, when they become artists, are more open to expressing themselves, which includes your emotions. And I do think art can be one tool that we use to raise up young boys, just like myself, to express more variety of emotions. I don't think being masculine is important to me at all, in any way or form. I don't think I want to be a masculine role model. I don't see myself wanting to be a provider and a strong man and all of that stuff. I'm quite happy with exploring myself in ways that the world might see as feminine. I think it's good and healthy for young boys to be able to do something like that, and I agree that poetry has helped.
Well, Mine, you did touch a little bit on digital migration and how people are, since the COVID, people had to move into digital space because you couldn't physically go into art galleries. And also that faced a conundrum or sort of like a problem, because most people who have buying power when it comes to art, more especially, people who are very old and very rigid in their ways, They need to physically see something. Young people might come and look, but they don't have the buying power to, in terms of buy the artwork that, they're very expensive. So how do you think those things can be linked, and also how can young people start collecting art from those who are known? So I know it's a very twofold question.
That is actually a question you asked, but it's actually a problem. I don't know the answer to it. Like, yes, everything you said is true. I think it's very, very hard for artists to monetize their products in this virtual realm. I don't know. But what contact that I've had doesn't seem that people are buying art on online platforms a lot. So, they have to think of new ways of doing that. Luckily, the spaces are opening up a lot more. I think artists, as Drew become much better at marketing themselves and in engaging on social media and everywhere they possibly can and getting themselves out there. I think people that used to be, like myself, being very lazy about it, is now you need to. So there's like the necessity of the situation made people just get those skills and get themselves out there. As to the collection part, it is true that people that tend to collect art is in a certain demographic. It used to be, well-off white people mostly. And I really do think that is changing. I think younger black people are collecting art. I think it's incredibly important. And it's exciting because they are a little bit more clued up in what's happening sometimes in the world. Like they are celebrating art that's relevant, very relevant, and in that way we support artists to do their work. And I really don't have an answer to the question exactly like what are we supposed to do about the fact that the buying power is so very much like it's not capitalism and it's not in the hands of the people that know where to spend it. So the kind of conversation I have in my head with people that come into galleries is this thing that you're supposed to invest. Art is an investment, and the truth is, unless you sell the work, you're not going to ever see the return on your investment. So the kind of conversation that I want to have is like the investment you make is then if I believe in what you're trying to say. You've touched me, or you've made me think, or I see things in you, your art that makes me want to invest in your talent, in your ideas and in your concept. So kind of breaking that thing, investment is monetary. Like I'm exchanging my money for what you are producing, and not that I am going to see a return on that. And I think in Bloemfontein there's a huge gap in that sense. I think actually I'm surprised that I'm the person that says this, that we need more commercial, a bigger commercial economy around art. So we need more people buying art, we need more spaces for them to do that, we need spaces that aren't so academically geared or educationally geared, that actually, so that there's that kind of natural ecosystem can just kind of get a little bit of an incentive. And I think it's going to happen, and I think I'll be happen soon. And if you can, in any way, as a young person, put away a little bit of your money, it should be spent on art. So that's all I have to say about it.
So when students come to you, or when art, you don't have to specialize, but you can't do everything at once. You can't be a jack of all trades. So how do you help a student who's confused to choose a medium that they feel comfortable with, or how to choose a specific medium, and how do you choose your medium of art?
When you study visual art, it is important to explore with different mediums before you can maybe advise someone to choose which medium to use. So the most important thing is to introduce the student or the learner to principles or elements of art, and then you'll be able to see where will learn is
And yours? How did you choose yours?
I've been working with different mediums and I fell in love with painting. So for me, if you're doing sculpture, if you're doing or painting, you start with drawing.
Okay.
Then how you explore the medium, it is up to you.
Fiona, we had a discussion earlier on because I think we're the only two who are sort of like outsiders coming in. You do computer science, I do political science. So sometimes as an outsider coming in, does that give you an edge, or how does that work for you? How do you feel that as someone who didn't study it coming in, does it give you an edge over, or do you feel that if you're not as shackled towards the institutionalized? Or the,
Well, I don't think I'm limited in any sense because you can basically find all the knowledge you need on the internet. So even if I should say with my degree, in some sense, the internet has actually helped me understand concepts of photography. Since I'm a self-taught, I wouldn't say self-taught because I learned from many people. Obviously, that's how you start. But I mean, the internet has really made things easier and more possible, if I should say. There are many tools, there are many ways of learning, and I don't think it has limited me in any way. I do know that I'm not able to spend as much time with photography as I would like to. So due to certain obligations, I kind of have to take a step back. But that has also allowed me to basically sit down and understand what I need to focus on. And in that sense, I'm able to come back with more intent. Instead of just creating just to create, I come back creating with a purpose. Yeah, thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Tebo Valasai. I'm a curator, I'm also an academic, and I also come from like a commercial space. I've worked for Evergreen and I worked for Goodman Gallery as both a curator and an artist liaison. And as of recent, I've been working as an independent curator. And I'm grateful for the invite to come to Bloemfontein because I'm primarily based in Joburg and do some work in Cape Town. And my background, I come from spaces where things are done in a particular way, where like it's white walls and artworks have to look a certain way. And coming to Bloemfontein and looking at how people are collaborating and finding new ways of exhibiting and engaging and showing artworks and creating new audience has been really eye-opening. And also I was really interested in most of the artists use collaboration as part of their artistic practices, which I think is something that needs to happen more. Because COVID has also shown us that relying on spaces and institutions is no longer a viable way of engaging with the arts. I was really engaged in the conversation and some of the topics that arise in the panel.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lebogang Mtejane and I am an academic in the arts. I've done fine art, so I teach art. My passion is in teaching, and I also love researching on teaching art, how to teach better and everything. So I have kind of this art teaching kind of made me like an art critic in a way, because you deal with students every day and you want to make them better, but not in a bad way, like constructive criticism and everything. But today I'm so amazed at you guys, at all these young artists. You guys are wonderful. I don't have any criticism on your work. I love everything about your work. Really, really, I mean it. I love everything. Well done on all your presentations. Yes, well done, well done. And Siamo, I love the diversity. It's incredible. I don't have so many words for you. All I can say is keep on invading those spaces. Keep on invading those spaces and keep on creating more spaces for these youngsters here. So you have done well and keep on doing the good work. It will pay off one day. And you have our support here in Bloemfontein and Mine. I love the way your work is so interactive, guys. I think everyone enjoyed that. It felt like I was actually in her work, interacting. And the artwork over there also is that, what's the name again? The life, who am I, who you, yes, who you. It's really lovely. I love that interactive part of it. You are engaging the public, engaging everyone in your work. I love it. And I wonder actually how you feel when you go out there, and talk to the people out there in the communities. It must be really exciting.
Should I answer? Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. I'm not gonna ask questions. Okay, it's just I don't really need a question from me. I'm just wondering, but it's a good thing. Keep it up, and I hope you are documenting those interactive artworks that you're doing in the community, because we that were not there would like to see and have that experiment that you were having while you are burning all that, So you don't have to answer why isn't the artwork staying there permanently. So we all have to experience it. So if everything is documented, then that's good. Keep on doing what you're doing. I love it. And Zizi, I also love your work. Very beautiful, the child's play concepts and everything. And I actually love everyone is busy with the community work. So that's what I love about you guys. You're not just creating artworks, you're involving the community, you are reaching out to the other young people. I really love that, Zizi. Keep it up. Keep up engaging with those children and producing more work and everything. And you, Fiona, too. I love your work. And I love the part where you talked about how film has made you confident. Because in our days, we grew up with film before the digital, and we have experienced it. It was quite a challenge for us if we didn't really learn it. So you have an opportunity now, and it has developed you to be a more confident artist, and I really love that. And what I can say about all of you guys is when you're creating your artworks, there are worldviews. So while you're creating your artworks, think about those worldviews. You as the artist, the artwork itself, and the viewer. So you have to have those worldviews. The worldview of the artwork, the worldview of the viewer, and your worldview as the creator of the artwork. So have that triangulation happening in your works while you're creating your works. So it's not just one-sided. So we all experiment your work differently, and yes. So you can express yourself better when you're thinking about all those worldviews. Thank you very much.
So first of all, I would like to give all our facilitators a round of applause. Can I please ask everyone? Excellent job done. Thank you so much for giving us a short insight into your world, especially for some of us who are not visual artists. Thank you for educating us and to give us a brief experience of your journey. So we would like to thank the National Arts Festival, our curators for the day, our facilitator, our mentors and all the participants. This is the day, the end of day 1 of the Mangaung Visual Arts Showcase, and we hope to see you here again tomorrow. So we are here with Ishumelo, which I came to know as an academic researcher and a chef, but she can also be described as a commercial photographer and a documentary photographer and a storyteller. But can you please tell us how would you describe Ishumelo?
Ishumelo Duyana is a photographer from a small rural town in the Eastern Cape called Stexbait. I am a photographer, a photojournalist, and a documentary photographer. I'm also a visual activist. I come from a background of academia. Years later, I decided to leave academia and focus on photography. And this was mainly influenced by my involvement in the academia, where I used to work around issues of social justice. And because of my own background in photography, because I started photography when I was quite young, I then decided to go and pursue my studies in photography. And that's where I began basically the journey of becoming a full-time storyteller using my lens.
So, Ishumelo, we came to know you in Bloemfontein as the person who was in the front line with students during the Fees Must Fall event or campaign. So, why do you do what you do, or why did you capture that specific movement?
Because I was, at the time, I was busy with my master's, which I eventually did not complete. I felt that it was important that the stories or the Fees Must Fall of the UFS Fees Must Fall must be documented, because I mean, we are not vets, or we don't have SABC down Auckland Park or ENCA, so our story was not documented. So I felt it was my responsibility as a storyteller and as a visual activist to document the UFS Fees Must Fall. So that's why I did it. It was eventually I got a name. I was called the photographer of the struggle. And I felt it was important that also our story should be listened at, because we're not vets. If we sneeze, not everybody coughs, or everybody listens. So we decided that we should do our own documentation, and I did that.
So when I look at your work, I will think it's only a specific segment, but how did your work change over time?
So Fees Must Fall started, remember, in 2015, mid-October. So my photography or my documentation of Fees Must Fall, it's quite a large body of work, because there's layers and various narratives, from Fees Must Fall to Unsilence UFS to outsourcing to the feminist struggle to the struggle of the LGBTIQ. So it's many layers that are there, decolonization and so forth. So as a photographer or as a photojournalist, you are trained that when you go out in the field, you need to have an idea. You must have a story in your head on how you're going to tell a narrative. So every time when I went into the struggle or into these protests that were happening on campus, I knew exactly what I was going to document. And it worked, because I think the training for me made it easy for me to be able to document and to be able to tell exactly what was happening without trying to manipulate any information that was in front of my eyes.
So for me, as a visual artist, what is your role exactly in society?
I think my role basically is to listen. My role is to always remind myself that I'm a guest, and I should always honor and respect the people that I document. And given the opportunity to do that, it's humbling. So I always know my place, because I cannot invade, because I come as a guest, and a guest has to be able to abide with the rules of the space that they find themselves within. So I'm a guest in spaces.
So looking at your work, what do you like and dislike about your work?
It's a question I can't answer. It's a difficult question. Look, as a photographer, I think what is fulfilling, because I mean, I always say that the picture I take today has to be different. The picture that I'm going to take tomorrow has to be different from the picture that I took today. So you strive to become a better storyteller, because it's all about, we see in frames, every day, every time. So I can't really talk about my work, and I can't compliment my work. People have to tell me what they think of my work. Because anyway, art is about questions. It has to lead questions. But I think what is fulfilling is when you see your work on the wall. That for me is a reward in some way.
So what can we expect from Hlumelo in 2022 going forward?
It's been tough. I mean, lockdown has really forced us to slow down a bit. There's a body of work that I'm working on, which I'm not going to talk about, using not my camera, using my phone. So I'm documenting, how people are, the role that we played in terms of COVID. So I'm using my phone to document that role. So yeah, when it comes out, you will see that.
Thank you so much, Rumi, and thank you for giving us a piece of your world. And we hope to see a lot more of you in the future.
Thank you.
We are new in Nosana. So I came to know Nosana as an LGBTQIA++ activist, a cinematographer, a visual artist, but also a lover of light. But I would like Nosana to tell us, who is Nosana exactly?
Who is Nosana? Gosh, depends on the hat. The hat today is videographer. My favorite visual art expression is video. I call myself a time traveler because I control time with the videos that I take. I often do videography at live events and once-off events, and it will sometimes be an 8-hour event or a 20-hour event, and then I edit it down into 5 minutes. And often people only remember the 5 minutes that I edited down and forget everything else, even if they were there. So that's what I love so much about videography, that you can go back in time. You can go back to 2015, go back to 2010, go back to last year by just pressing play on a YouTube video. Yeah.
So I also came to know Nosana as a woman who's not scared to talk about the feminine body, about vagina monologues, about masturbation, and also about the LGBTQI. So please give us a snapshot or synopsis of your journey as the LGBTQI or an activist of the LGBTQI family.
Thanks, Tessa. That's my equal passion to visual arts, which is gender activism, gender equality. All genders, there aren't just two genders, there's multiple, it's a whole spectrum. And using visual art to do gender activist work, we actually have a petition where the current misunderstanding around LGBTQIA+ lives is that we haven't seen various and many types of individuals. Television, stories, books, there aren't enough of us being represented. So it would be great if we could just see ourselves every day on TV, the same way cisgender heterosexual people see themselves every day on TV. And that is work that I'm really pushing for, that every day, even if perhaps on your social media people could say, yes, I see myself, but you curate your own social media with the friends that you have. We need to be in spaces that we aren't currently seeing ourselves, so that people can actually say, oh my gosh, that's just another person. It's not a gay person or a queer person. So I'm very passionate about that, the visibility of all minorities, including LGBTI.
So when we take visual arts and LGBTQI and we want to educate our kids in school, how do we do that? Where do we start? Because currently so many of our children are discriminated in school because they're not supposed to wear a skirt because they're in a male body.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to wear pants because they're in a female body. So how do we use the visual arts to spread the message of LGBTQI in our schools?
Well, the Department of Education actually created a handbook that is supposed to be used in life orientation classes. It's called Challenging Homophobic Bullying in Schools, and it was created to be used in schools. However, what happens sometimes, parents protest the book, or teachers or principals are a bit hesitant to use the book. So the book is currently not a prescribed book. It is an optional book. So what we do in schools and even in homes of LGBTI kids and parents is that we bring the book to assist in the understanding, and for schools also to assist their treatment. Because all we're talking about is equality, we're not talking about special treatment. So it's there, and we encourage it to be used. I mean, if you just go on the internet and you go Challenging Homophobic Bullying in Schools, that PDF will crop up. It's free, you'll download it and you'll have access to it.
So now we know that Nosana is a visual artist, photographer, a documentary photographer, a commercial photographer, but you're also an LGBTQI activist.
Yes.
So how has your work changed over the years?
The work changed in the sense that now I've got a newsletter as well, and before I was always featuring in other print or digital publications, and I'm producing a lot of solo projects which include a lot of contributions. It's so great when even students from the university write articles, and then we include them in our newsletter. And I started off as a poet, okay? So that has changed in the sense that now I've got publications of my poetry anthologies that are just free on the internet on issue. It's called the Poet Drama. And I also was interested in assisting other poets to kind of communicate with pictures and with videos of their work, so kind of poetry videos. I've been happy to work with a lot of poets. And also, after being the videographer at a lot of poetry events, now I'm the videographer at LGBTQI events, and I'm also including arts in LGBTQI events that would have normally traditionally been like, this is the doctor, this is the nurse, this is the client, this is HIV, and I'm producing theatre productions, and we are featuring those, so I'm very excited about that. And the cool thing is, because there's lots of unemployment within the LGBTI community, is that they're excited about the less academic, less in-your-face activism. They're interested in being storytellers in this space, because the stories we tell are about them, and they see themselves, and they're maybe not confident to kind of talk the academic language, but they're comfortable acting as themselves, and giving them that opportunity, and them to practice an open life skills club that have them doing healthy things instead of like substance abuse. It's great. And also it's a tool for them to understand their situations and their relationships and in their homes. So it's so cool to listen to the panelists, what Tiamo is doing and what Zizi is doing, because I'm doing that directly in the work that was supposed to specifically speak to work that is happening in clinics. We are making plays about your fears, and then people are laughing about it, and that's healing. So I'm enjoying that a lot.
Nosana, you're so well-rounded with so much talent and gifts. But I need to ask you, as an artist myself, there must be something that you like about your work and something that you dislike about what you are doing. Can you please enlighten us?
What do I like about? Well, I love my work. I really do. I'm one of those boring people where with my peers they'll be like, when do you switch off? We finished with work now. It's after the program, and you're still discussing it. You're still talking about it. So what I don't like is how maybe it can affect people close to me, that I do bring my work home, and the people closest to me need to understand that I love it. I don't see it as work, but this doesn't mean I don't like being paid for it. I love being paid for it. I must continue to be paid for it. I must be paid more for it. I don't like people knowing that because it's important, I would be interested without being paid, because I need to see that value. What Mine was saying about return of investment, I spend money on my equipment.
Yes.
And I spend hours editing the footage. I'd like to be remunerated for that, but because of the quality of the product, I think people understand, and also the speed of the product as well. Sometimes you go to an event and then you see the pictures a month later, you've even forgotten about that. It's so important to kind of like give people back their product quickly, like within a couple of days, one day, next day, and people appreciate that, yeah.
And it's something I came to know about you, because you are so efficient and so effective. You deliver the product like on the same day. I'm a living witness of that. So thank you so much, Masana, for giving us a sneak peek into your world of a visual artist and an LGBTQI activist, but also as a lover of light and love. And personally, I hope to see so much more of you in 2022.
I'm not going anywhere. Thank you, Tessa. All right.
So today I'm here with Sitseho, that I came to know as a makeup artist. But I would like Sitseho to tell us, who is Sitseho exactly?
Hi everyone, my name is Sitseho Msutwana. I'm a lecturer by profession, and then part-time I do makeup artistry. And I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a friend. I'm just naturally just a lover of life and art and great things, more like me.
So I would like to know, Sitseho, because when I look at academics, it's very serious. So how do you cross from academics to makeup artistry?
What actually happened was that I was a lecturer, and then during the time when I was busy lecturing, I fell pregnant with my second child. So during the time while I was waiting for my daughter to arrive, I got extremely bored because it was like leave for days and days, and I didn't know what to do. So I started to search for artistic things that I can pour my energy into. So I decided to get a new skill, and I found videos online that I can learn how to do makeup, and I started applying makeup on myself and on other people for like a whole year, basically doing makeup just to enrich my skill levels. And then from there, I became known around Bloemfontein as a makeup artist, because I would do makeup for people at graduations and weddings and parties. And I would just love the feeling of making people feel gorgeous, you know, when they look at their pictures at the end of the makeup session and they were walking around having their makeup on. It's like just a new version of themselves. It's still you, but with a bit of pizzazz, you know? Yeah, so I just loved making people feel that way. So from being an academic to makeup it was just a natural thing that came about during that period in my life when I became a mother.
So I'm a spoken word artist, so for me to better myself in my craft, I need to write every day. So as a makeup artist, do you basically just get up and make up people to look like this, or do you have to practice your skill every day?
I have to practice every day. I mostly practice on myself because I'm the only canvas that I have access to every day. So if it's not me, then it's my clients. But I definitely practice on myself. I do makeup on myself mostly every day, and I love it.
So as artists, we know that sometimes we deliver a piece, then people would critique our piece. We do photography or photo where people would criticize us. Was there ever a point in your life that you, as a makeup artist, did a piece of art in someone and they didn't like it, and how did you react to that?
Yes, it happens. Like in the beginning part of my journey, obviously I was just a junior and starting out. So I had an art form that I did, like I was trying out something with the eyelashes or the eyebrows, and then the person that I was doing makeup on was like, no, this is not me. But then I was like understanding, and I just erased it and did a new one so that they can feel comfortable, because not everybody does makeup, and we have to understand that sometimes when a person comes to you for makeup, sometimes it's just a random thing that they're trying out for that time. So we have to listen to a person's brief. If they say, I want it mild, I want it soft, or I want it bold, I want it dramatic, or I want a wedding pink, or, you have to listen and do what that client asks. So I learned that from the very beginning, after I made that first mistake, that okay, this person wanted to do something mild and I went bold. So yeah, it happens, but that was something that I learned from, yeah.
So in the arts, we have different forms of artistry. Like today, we had a broader view of visual arts. And sometimes we also have competition in the arts. When we would say, okay, this is visual arts, and there's a spoken word artist. So do you also see yourself, do you describe yourself as an artist? Because sometimes when people talk about makeup, they don't see it as an artistry. It's just to look good and to look sassy. But do you see yourself as an artist?
I view myself as an artist. I feel like every face that I encounter is a blank canvas for me. And I take it as a way to express myself artistically. And I really ask the client what it is that you would want to achieve with the look that you want me to create for you. So it is an art form, because we are basically creating something from scratch, from a blank surface, which is a face that we use. Sometimes we do body art, sometimes we do art on the hair, but with whatever utensils that we use or products that we use, I still think that it can be described as art, because we are doing something creative.
So what is your vision as a makeup artist for 2022 and the way forward in the art industry?
Okay, for me, next year I just want to do more productions like I did this year. This is the second production that I did, and I really love being the space with more artists that are doing creative things. And next year I just want to do more of this kind of work, because in the past 5 years I've been doing a lot of weddings, a lot of parties and graduations, and I haven't had a chance or opportunity to be in a set. So I would like to do a lot more set work and be like part of a greater production piece. So that's what I would like.
Thank you so much, Sitiko, and thank you for making me look good today. And we hope to see much more of you in the art world, in the industry, in theatre productions, and all types of productions. Thank you so much for having me today.